Hey guys, just a quick one. Last video hit over 100 comments, which is absolutely mind-blowing for this channel. Let's try that again for this video. Comment down what you think about these stories or just a hello and the team will reply. We always reply to the comments. As always, please like and subscribe and help this channel grow. Thank you. It started with a random Snapchat from an unknown account. I still remember that fateful ping on my phone. At first, I thought nothing of it, assuming it was just another friend request or random ad. But when I opened the snap, I felt my heart nearly stop. It was a photo of me walking down the street near my apartment, completely oblivious that someone was taking a picture just a few yards behind me. I was mid-stride, coffee cup in one hand, looking down at my phone in the other. The background was unmistakably my block. I quickly closed the app, my hands shaking. Who could have taken that? Why would they send it to me? I racked my brain but couldn't think of anyone who would do something like this. Maybe it was just some harmless prank by a friend, but the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. I tried to shrug it off and go about my day. But over the next week, the snaps kept coming. Each day, a new photo of me that I had no idea was being taken. Me sitting at my desk through the window, cooking dinner in my apartment, getting ready for bed. One evening, even a photo of me in the shower, the camera peeking through a small gap in the bathroom window. I started to feel violated, paranoid. My private moments captured without me knowing by someone lurking unseen. I messaged the anonymous account asking who they were, begging them to stop. But no response ever came, just more unsettling snaps. It went on like this for weeks. My anonymous stalker knew no boundaries. Pictures of me at the gym, the grocery store, out to eat with friends. It was like they were following me everywhere, documenting every moment of my life. I considered going to the police, but what could I really tell them? I had no evidence of who this person was, and the photos, while disturbing, weren't technically illegal. So I tried to ignore it, praying it was just some creep who would eventually get bored and move on. But one evening, the snaps took an even more sinister turn. I opened the app to see a photo of the inside of my apartment. My living room, my safe haven, invaded by this anonymous menace. I felt my sanity start to unravel, the situation spiraling out of my control. I immediately changed all the locks, checked every window, unsure if this person had just photographed my apartment, or if they had actually been inside. I hardly slept, jolting awake at every creak or sound. The snaps became my own personal horror movie play out via app, a voyeuristic intruder directing scenes of my everyday life. Me doing dishes, watching TV, even sleeping, the camera flashlighting up my darkened bedroom. I stopped going out, stopped living my life, just waiting in fear for the next snap. Until one night, a photo arrived that made my blood turn to ice. My bedroom, the lamp on the nightstand. But in the reflection of the closet mirror, a shadowy figure standing in the corner, watching me, inside my home. I've never felt fear like holding that phone, realizing someone was in my apartment at that very moment. I grabbed the baseball bat by my bed and searched every room, hands shaking, but found nothing disturbed. Had I imagined the figure in the reflection? A trick of the light? I didn't sleep at all that night, or the next. I nearly had a panic attack just standing in line for coffee, convinced everyone around me could be the stalker. I felt constantly on the precipice of a nervous breakdown. The police could still find no trace of an intruder. All they offered were suggestions for a security system, increased patrols. But it did nothing to subdue the nameless, faceless threat that had invaded every aspect of my life. Then one morning, the snaps just stopped. Days went by without a single photo arriving. At first I was relieved, hoping my tormentor had gotten bored and moved on. But as the days turned to weeks, the silence almost made things worse. Like waiting for the jump scare in a horror movie, I found myself constantly on edge, wondering when the snaps would start up again. At least before I knew what was happening, could brace for the next photo. Now I was in limbo. My stalker could be anywhere. Planning their next move, watching me even now that I wouldn't know. It's been months since the last snap. I've moved apartments, changed my number, practically gone off the grid. The police have no leads. I should feel safe, but late at night, hearing a noise in the hallway, I still find myself waiting for that familiar ping on my phone, signaling my tormentor has returned for more. Will I ever know who it was or why they fixated on me? I may never learn the answers, but the experience will stay with me. That lingering paranoia, feeling unsafe in places I should know as sanctuaries. I don't know if it will ever fully go away. All I know is I'll never look at Snapchat the same way again. A tool that once represented fun and connection transformed into a vehicle for fear. We assume apps bring people together, but sometimes they can dangerously expose us in ways we never expect. My world was turned upside down by nothing more than a series of 10-second photos. Hard to forget the darkness that can be uncovered from behind that playful yellow ghost. It all started a couple of months ago when I went on a first date with this guy I met through a mutual friend. We had matched on a dating app and he seemed nice enough from our messages back and forth, so I agreed to meet up for dinner. The date went pretty well, we had good conversation, and he was polite and friendly in person. At the end of the night, we exchanged numbers and made vague plans to possibly see each other again soon. I didn't think much of him after that first date. I was talking to a few other guys from the app, and nothing had really stood out about this particular one. But a week or so later, he texted asking if I wanted to get together again. I didn't have any other plans that night, so I said yes. We met up at a bar this time, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best idea for a second date with someone I barely knew. I had a couple drinks which lowered my guard. Again, we had decent surface level conversation, but not much of a connection. When he asked if he could see me again, I hesitated. I knew I wasn't interested in pursuing anything further, but I felt bad turning him down outright, so I said I was busy over the next couple of weeks, but maybe sometime later. He seemed disappointed, but said he understood. That was the last time I willingly saw or spoke to him, but it was only the beginning of things taking a disturbing turn. It started gradually at first. I'd be out with friends and check Snapchat, and notice his Bitmoji would be at the same location as us. For example, my girlfriends and I would be getting brunch at our favorite cafe, and I'd glance at the map and see his little avatar there too. My initial thought was that it was just a weird coincidence. There were only so many places to go in our small town, so overlapping at the same popular brunch spot didn't seem crazy. But then it kept happening. I'd be at my local bear class and see him right there in the same studio lobby. I'd be picking up groceries at the neighborhood market and notice him by the checkouts. The thing was, he never tried to talk to me in person or let me know he was there, but his Bitmoji on the Snap map gave him away. At first, I thought it must just be an odd string of coincidences. Maybe we lived closer than I realized and just shared a lot of the same haunts. But something about the frequency seemed too uncanny. My guard started to go up, but I tried to shake it off. That became impossible once the snaps started rolling in. Seemingly innocent at first, coming in while his Bitmoji would be right nearby mine talking about how he was coincidentally where I was at the same time. Then they evolved to make direct references to me and my actions, talking about the things I was wearing or what I was eating. It really started to freak me out because somehow he knew not just where we were, but exactly what I was wearing. The snaps became my dreaded notification. Each buzz of my phone struck horror and panic as I wondered what private moment of mine he would reference next. I felt violated in the deepest sense, like my entire life was on display for his lurking eyes. I would scan every room, peering around corners, irrationally expecting to see him pop out at any moment. I went into protection mode. I changed up my routine, going to different gyms, coffee shops, bars. I kept location services off and stopped posting on Snapchat. But it seemed like the more I pulled back publicly, the more specific and invasive the messages became. They knew exactly where I was, what I was doing, and at times even what I was thinking and feeling. It was terrifying and enraging to feel so violated but also helpless. I desperately wanted to make it stop, but didn't know how. Going to the police crossed my mind but seemed fruitless. I had no hard proof of who was sending the snaps or if they were the same person stalking me in real life. I realized I didn't even know this guy's real full name. We'd only ever communicated through the dating app then Snapchat. Filing a report felt pointless without concrete evidence of a crime. So I suffered in silence, jumping out of my skin at the slightest sound. I withdrew from friends and activities I once enjoyed. I was a shell of myself, consumed by fear of my stalker and frustration with my inability to escape this nightmare. The final straw came when I was visiting my parents one weekend to try to get away from it all. It was an hour away in a town this guy had no reason to ever be in. Yet while watching TV with my mom, a snap came in. He said, "Cozy night in with the family. Your dad seems like a funny guy, cool parents. Sweet dreams." I instantly burst into tears, finally realizing there was no escaping this monster. He was always lurking in the shadows, following my every move no matter how far I ran. My parents were terrified and begged me to go to the police. The next morning, my dad actually drove me to the station himself and waited there while I filed a report. I locked my phone and let the officer scroll through months of unsolicited snaps, watch the progression from casual coincidences to obvious tracking. I learned this guy did actually have a criminal record, including stalking and harassment charges from other women. I wish I had known that earlier, as it made me feel less paranoid and ridiculous about my concerns. The police tracked down his full name and address associated with the social media accounts, and confirmed it was the same man I had briefly dated. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of relief knowing I wasn't imagining things. This calculated stalking and harassment was as real as I feared, and now it was in the hands of professionals, not just a nameless, faceless anxiety I've had to handle alone. It's been a few months since that day in the police station, and life has slowly started feeling normal again. The snap stopped immediately thanks to a restraining order granted against this psycho. I jumped at the chance to move out of my apartment to a new place he wouldn't know about, and I took self-defense classes to feel stronger and safer on my own. The nightmares still come. I don't know if I'll ever shake the hypervigilance this ordeal created. I constantly check over my shoulder and keep location services off unless absolutely necessary. But I'm trying not to let fear rule my life any more now that the immediate threat is gone. My hope from sharing this story is that it empowers other women who may be going through similar stalking and harassment situations. Don't ignore those gut instincts like I initially did. It started off as a typical day. I was lounging around my apartment, scrolling absent-mindedly through my Snapchat feed, when I noticed something peculiar that made me do a double take. My friend James had sent me a snap, but it wasn't his usual casual selfie or inside joke. Instead, it was a graphic, deeply disturbing image that made my stomach churn. An extremely violent scene that seemed to be taken straight from a horror movie. Confused and concerned, I quickly typed back, asking James if he was all right and what was going on. But the response I received only amplified my unease. James, who was normally upbeat and mild-mannered, responded with a stream of vile, offensive language and threats that seemed completely and utterly out of character for him. I stared at my phone screen in disbelief, reading and rereading the hateful diatribe coming from my friend's account. A feeling of panic started to rise within me as I frantically checked my own Snapchat profile, only to find that I had been logged out against my will. I tried desperately to log back in, my fingers fumbling over the password I knew by heart, but every attempt was met with the same ominous message. Account not found. My heart began to pound deafeningly in my ears as I realized this meant my entire Snapchat account, with all of my saved memories, conversations, and built-up social connections, had been mysteriously wiped from existence. It was as if I had never even existed on the platform at all. My mind raced as I tried to comprehend what was happening. Was this all just some nightmare? Some bizarre glitch? I attempted to reach out to a few other friends on Snapchat, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed out messages asking if they had received strange snaps as well, or if they knew why I couldn't access my profile. But most of the responses only increased the sense of dread and isolation creeping over me. Many of them had also gotten deeply disturbing and graphic snaps from my account within the past hour. And most disturbingly, some even responded accusing me of being some deranged lunatic who was sending around sick and twisted images. They had blocked me instantly, assuming I was the one targeting them with these vile snaps. I felt like I was in a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. I was completely cut off, isolated from the digital world I had become so immersed in. The realization slowly dawned on me that somehow, in some inexplicable way, my Snapchat account had been hacked. Some faceless, malicious stranger had managed to gain access to my login credentials and was now gleefully impersonating me, using my account to relentlessly torment my friends and tarnish my reputation. The thought of someone having that level of control over my profile, my personal information, my online identity, it made me feel helplessly violated and my skin crawl. I frantically tried to research ways to regain control over my clearly compromised account, combing online forums and support pages, calling up Snapchat representatives who all repeated the same unhelpful script. But every avenue was a dead end. My account had been permanently deactivated, they informed me, due to multiple and repeated violations of our terms of service. I pleaded with them that it wasn't me that I had been hacked, but the customer service agents I spoke with were frustratingly unsympathetic. They told me there was no way to recover or reinstate my erased account. It was gone for good. The days and then weeks following this nightmare were some of the darkest, most isolating times. Most of my friends from before were now ice cold towards me at best, assuming I had been the one tormenting them with disturbing content. My reputation was destroyed. I was too anxious and paranoid to make new connections, always wondering I would just lose them again at the hands of some faceless hacker. I couldn't even make a new Snapchat profile, as my device and IP address were now permanently flagged and banned on the platform. I felt like a ghost, erased from my communities, my support systems, the digital landscape that had become so familiar. It was as if a part of my identity had been stolen from me with callous indifference. I fell into a deep depression, feeling violated, cut off, and powerless. I constantly doubted myself and my own judgment. If all my digital connections and persona could be so easily erased in an instant, were they ever real at all? I started to question if anything about my online life had been genuine. The thought that someone could so completely control and eliminate my digital identity rattled me to my core and left emotional scars. Eventually, after months of rebuilding and reconnecting offline, I started to recover some normalcy and hope. I learned to be much more careful about protecting personal information and heeding online security measures. I don't take my digital profiles and connections for granted anymore. I know how quickly it can all disappear. And while I still feel twinges of anxiety using social media, the nightmarish experience of having my identity hijacked and deleted against my will drove home the importance of vigilance, boundaries, and balance in my digital life. I never want to feel so erased and isolated again. What happened haunted me, but also taught me valuable lessons about valuing the genuine over the virtual. I'm still putting my life back together, but I'm determined not to let that stranger control me forever. I was sitting in math class, struggling to stay awake as Mr. Jenkins droned on and on about algebraic equations. Out of boredom, I discreetly pulled out my phone to check Snapchat under my desk. A familiar notification popped up. My best friend Jenny had sent me a snap. Without thinking, I immediately clicked to open it, expecting to see a goofy selfie of her making a face or complaining about having to be in school. Jenny always sent the funniest, most random snaps that never failed to make me laugh. But when her snap loaded, I froze. It was a photo of the backyard of her house, the one we used to play in for hours as kids. The bright green grass and colorful flower bushes were so familiar, but scrawled across the image in what looked like dark red paint or blood and with the chilling words, "You know what you did." I stared at the photo in disbelief and confusion. Jenny had died almost a month ago, hit by a car just blocks from her house. There was no way she could possibly be sending me snaps. I felt my hands start to tremble as an icy feeling of dread washed over me. At first, I tried to convince myself that this must be some kind of disturbed prank by someone at school who had hacked Jenny's old account. Some of the kids had been really cruel about her accident, making nasty jokes and memes because they knew how close we were. As disturbing as this snap was, I assumed one of those jerks had decided to pull a prank in poor taste. I clicked out of the app and tried to return my focus to the equations on the board, but I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept flashing back to that sinister crimson writing and the backyard I had played in so many times growing up next to my best friend. I had an unsettled feeling in the pit of my stomach that I couldn't seem to shake. Over the next week, the snaps kept coming from Jenny's account. Each one made my heart race faster. They were photos of places the two of us used to love and frequent together, with foreboding messages written in what looked like fresh blood. "Why did you let this happen to me?" Read menacing scrawl over a photo of the frozen yogurt place we went to every Friday night. "You could have saved me," dripped down an image of the park we walked through after school nearly every day. The photos gave me chills, but it was the messages that really unnerved me. They seemed too personal, too real, as if they knew intimate details about my friendship with Jenny and the guilt I felt over losing her. Whoever was sending them clearly had access to her account and devices. I desperately wanted to believe the snaps were an act of cruelty by someone at school, but they were too eerily specific. I decided that I needed to get to the bottom of where these disturbing messages were coming from. The next time I received a snap, a blurry photo of Jenny's locker with "It's your fault" angrily carved into the metal, I immediately screenshotted it before it could disappear. My hands were clammy and shaking as I pulled up a reversed image search online, scared of what I might discover, but needing to know the truth. I felt my stomach drop when I saw the results. The image had originated that very morning before classes started. Someone had taken that photo of Jenny's locker just hours before sending it to me. I knew then this was not some random act of insensitivity by a classmate. Whoever was accessing Jenny's account had been at our school that day. I decided right then that I had to go to the police. This person clearly had sinister intentions, beyond just a twisted desire to upset me in my grief. After classes ended, I went straight to the local police station and asked to speak with someone about the disturbing messages I had been receiving. At first, the officers seemed skeptical as I told them about the snaps. But when I showed them the images on my phone and explained just how personal the messages were, they agreed this was something serious that required investigation. I was so unnerved I could barely speak in a steady voice to explain the timeline of the messages and all the details that only Jenny would have known. The police asked if I had any suspicions about who could be behind this malicious act. All I could think of were those bullies at school who had smugly joked about Jenny's accident immediately after it happened. As awful as their words had been, I didn't think they were capable of something so calculated and cruel. But I knew whoever was doing this had some connection to Jenny and likely attended our school. Using the timestamps and locations of the snaps, the police were able to trace the account activity back to an IP address just a few streets over from Jenny's house. I gasped when they told me the name associated with it. It was a teenage boy who had bullied and tormented Jenny horribly back in middle school. I guess he had never gotten over his twisted obsession with seeing her suffer. The police weren't sure if the boy was actually involved in Jenny's hit and run, or if he was just taking this opportunity to further harass me by dredging up the terrible pain of her death. Either way, he was facing charges for the harassment and hacking of her account. I felt a huge wave of relief wash over me when I blocked the account, knowing Jenny wasn't somehow sending me messages from beyond the grave after all. But the chilling incident has left me feeling shaken in a way I haven't experienced since those first awful days after losing my best friend. Getting those snaps was like ripping open those deep wounds once again, bringing all the awful feelings of guilt and regret flooding back to the surface when I had just begun to process them. I keep replaying things in my head, wondering if I should have been there with Jenny that night, if I could have prevented the accident somehow if I had just made different choices. Her death was so sudden, so senseless, that I was completely blindsided at first. I never got to say goodbye. Those snaps brought back the pain that I might have failed her in those final moments, despite all the years of friendship between us. Intellectually, I know the pain will dull over time as I process the grief and loss in my own way. I'll be left with all the amazing memories of my vibrant, funny best friend who lived every day to the absolute fullest. I'll always cherish the little everyday moments we shared together over the years, until that friendship was ripped away without warning by a cruel twist of fate. For now, though, I still find myself sitting alone in our favorite places. The yogurt shop, the park, even quietly driving through her neighborhood streets, half expecting to see a new notification pop up from her at any moment. I stare at old photos of us together, reminiscing on all the simple, perfect times throughout our childhood together before everything changed so drastically. In the quiet moments, my mind drifts to thoughts of going back to those easier days before tragedy struck without warning. While Jenny's senseless death hurt me deeply, I also know that allowing this act of cruelty to undermine our friendship and all we meant to each other taints her memory in a way she wouldn't want. I refuse to let this malicious person disrupt the bond Jenny and I have built throughout the years. She deserves better than that, and so do I. I can still remember the excitement I felt when I matched with her on Snapchat. Her profile pictures were perfect, beautiful, captivating, and just my type. We started chatting right away, and the conversation flowed so naturally. She seemed smart, funny, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. I couldn't believe my luck. Over the next few days, we continued snapping back and forth. The more we talked, the more I felt drawn to her. She was everything I could have asked for in a potential partner. Funny, kind, and drop-dead gorgeous. Her snaps showed a life that seemed carefree and adventurous, hiking through forests, lounging on tropical beaches, laughing with friends over drinks. Each photo was more alluring than the last. I started looking forward to her snaps lighting up my phone, signaling a momentary escape into her world. When she suggested we meet up for drinks, I jumped at the chance. We decided on a cozy little bar downtown, not too far from where I lived. I spent way too long getting ready, making sure I looked my absolute best. I must have changed my outfit half a dozen times before settling on slim jeans and a button-down shirt. I styled my hair just right, spritzed on some cologne, and headed out the door. The whole drive over, my mind raced with anticipation. Would conversation flow as effortlessly as our snaps? Would she be as witty and charming in real life? I pictured us hitting it off instantly, talking and laughing for hours. By the end of the night, I had imagined asking her on a real date. Everything in her snaps pointed to an incredible connection just waiting to happen. The bar was dimly lit and quiet when I arrived. I scanned the room looking for her. My heart raced as I spotted a woman sitting alone at a table in the corner. Even in the low light, I could tell she looked just like the gorgeous snaps that had drawn me in. I took a deep breath and made my way over. I introduced myself, trying to sound confident as I extended my hand in greeting. She looked up at me, and for a brief moment, I thought I was looking into the eyes of the same captivating woman from the Snapchat photos. But as she tentatively shook my hand, the fantasy began to crack. Up close, her features seemed similar but slightly off, the shape of her face a bit too round, the crinkle of her eyes meeting mine missing the magnetism I expected. As we exchanged introductions, her voice sounded nothing like the melodic, confident tone from our calls. She seemed anxious, reticent. I sat down across from her, trying in vain to recapture the vision of connection I had built up. We made small talk, but the conversation felt flat, mundane. She responded politely to my questions, but offered little back. No witty banter, no flirtatious jokes, no sign of the depth I knew had to exist beyond the surface. The more we spoke, the more glaring our disconnect became. This was someone entirely different. Quiet, reserved, ill at ease. I started grasping for shared interests or experiences we could bond over, but came up empty. Her answers revealed little, getting me nowhere to find common ground. I soldiered through the awkward interaction for a while longer, trying to spark something genuine. But denial was giving way to the painful truth. This wasn't the same person at all. I had fallen for carefully curated snapshots of a life far removed from the real woman sitting across from me. Eventually, I worked up the courage to ask the question I dreaded. Are you the same person I've been talking to on Snapchat? She tensed, looking down at the table. After a pause, she admitted that she was not the same person and apologized for the deception. My heart sank instantly. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. How could I have been so foolish, so willing to believe a fantasy? I sat there reeling, unsure how to even respond. I asked for her real name, Lily. She explained that she had used photos and details from a friend's life to keep me interested, never expecting we would actually meet. The more she spoke, the clearer it became. I had been utterly, completely catfished. I was too shocked to storm out right away. I felt compelled to hear her out, though my guard was sky high now. We talked for a while longer, Lily opening up bit by bit about struggles in her life that led her to create a fake identity. I empathized on some level, but resentment simmered right alongside. She had wasted my time, crushed my hopes for real connection. I had let myself get pulled in by smoke and mirrors. After an hour or so, Lily suggested we go somewhere more private to continue talking. I agreed, and we left the bar for a nearby park. Lily led the way down a deserted path, farther from the streetlights and passersby. Unease creeped up my spine. What was I doing out here alone with someone I just met, who had already admitted elaborate deception? I shook off the thought, telling myself I was just hearing her out before parting ways. We were halfway down the shadowy path when Lily stopped abruptly. She turned to face me, the darkness obscuring her expression. Before I could respond, she lunged forward, shoving me violently to the ground. Adrenaline flooded my system as I struggled to make sense of what was happening. Lily was on top of me, knees pressing my chest, hands clutching my throat. I gasped for air, clawing desperately at her hands, but her grip only tightened. My heart hammered as I thrashed to break free. Lily's face loomed above me, the timid woman from the bar nowhere to be found. Her eyes were wild, lips curled in a snarl. My lungs screamed for oxygen as she choked the life out of me. She meant to kill me. I saw it in her fury. How could I have let this happen? Summoning my last strength, I managed to twist out from under her and crawl away, gasping raggedly. But she pounced again, even more enraged. She flipped me onto my back, gripping my neck tighter than before. My vision darkened at the edges. Each gasp drew less air. I knew I would die strangled by this stranger, too trusting for my own good. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the attack ceased. Lily released me, repeating "I'm sorry" brokenly. Before I could respond, she turned and fled into the night. I stumbled home, collapsed, and dissolved into panicked tears. In the weeks that followed, the police found no leads on Lily despite my many details. She had fabricated everything about herself. She was a ghost who emerged to attack, then disappeared. In time, my physical wounds healed, but psychological ones festered. I was consumed with questions. How had I ignored every warning sign? Why did the stranger turn violent? What if she targeted someone else? I had lost all common sense in wanting connection so badly. I knew the online dating dangers, but strolled blindly into peril anyway. I was reckless, foolish, and it nearly cost me my life. It all started with a simple Snapchat story. I was lounging in bed, thumbing lazily through social media before turning in for the night. Snapchat was my usual routine. Check for anything interesting from my friends, maybe send a selfie or two. Harmless stuff. But on this night, something out of the ordinary caught my eye. It was a video posted from my own account. The thumbnail showed me, unmistakably me, standing under a flickering street lamp, glancing around uneasily. I felt a prickle of confusion. I didn't remember filming that, let alone posting it. I tapped the story, a knot of apprehension forming in my stomach. The video began to play. It was brief, just a few seconds long. But there I was on the screen, clear as day. I stood on an unfamiliar sidewalk bathed in sickly yellow light. My eyes shifted back and forth warily, as if watching for unseen threats in the shadows. I appeared frightened, maybe even hunted. The camera panned up, revealing a battered neon sign in the background, Mike's Bar and Grill. I'd never heard of the place. The video ended abruptly, leaving only a lingering caption. This is where it all went down. I stared at my phone, dumbfounded. The late hour left my mind hazy, struggling to make sense of what I'd just seen. It was posted from my account, but I knew with chilling certainty that I hadn't recorded it. Someone must have hacked my Snapchat, using my likeness to fabricate an odd little video. But why? And what was that cryptic caption supposed to mean? Unease slithered up my spine. This couldn't be good. I rewatched the video, analyzing each frame. The street looked run down, hinting at a rougher part of town. The bar's sign flickered erratically, the few letters burned out. In my expression, I looked petrified, like I'd stumbled into something dangerous. The whole scene felt ominous, even threatening. I had to get to the bottom of this. After some amateur sleuthing online, I discovered the bar's location deep in the city's warehouse district. Not an ideal spot for a young woman alone at night. The area was known for crime, even disappearances. My anxiety ramped up, but I knew I had to investigate in person. Come morning, I made the drive across town, skirting the wastelands of abandoned factories and dead-eyed squatters that populated the district. I understood now why my video self had looked so unnerved. This was not a friendly place. At last I pulled up to the bar, noting its grimy facade and an unsavory mix of burly bikers loitering out front. Steeling myself, I went inside. The dark interior reeked of stale beer and echoes of violence past. A few shady patrons eyed me as I approached the counter. The bartender grunted in greeting, his bored expression implying I was merely another annoyance to tolerate. I started casually, not wanting to reveal why I was really there. I asked lightly for a beer, as if I were a regular. I surveyed the room discreetly as I nursed my drink. Graffiti covered the walls, and decades of filth caked the cracked vinyl booths. I saw no clues, nothing that hinted at why this place held such significance in my eerie video post. I was preparing to leave empty-handed when a flicker of movement caught my eye. In the murkiest corner of the bar sat a woman, face obscured by curtains of unwashed hair. Her body language projected menace, warning others to keep their distance. Curiosity tugged at me. Something about her seemed familiar. I sidled closer, squinting through the gloom until her features came into focus. I recoiled in shock. She looked exactly like me. My face, my hair, every detail an uncanny replica. A twisted doppelganger plucked straight from a nightmare. I approached her warily, heart hammering against my ribs. Up close I could see subtler signs of decay, sunken cheeks, sallow skin, teeth yellowed from misuse. Her eyes gleamed with malevolent intelligence. My voice quivered as I spoke. I asked why she looked like me. She held my gaze, a smile creeping across her ravaged face. Her expression implied she had long worn my likeness before I was even born. Such a pretty little thing, so fresh and untainted. She reached out a claw-like hand to stroke my face. I recoiled from her touch. My realization dawned. Had she made the video using my identity? Her smile widened, revealing the full extent of her dental decay. It was clear this had all been a twisted game to her. I scanned the bar frantically, assessing the danger. No one was paying us any mind. For now, at least I was on my own. I had to play this carefully. I tried to bargain, inching backward. I said I would leave and forget this ever happened if she just stopped using my face. She tuttered approvingly. Her grip was surprisingly strong as she captured my wrist. She implied we had much to discuss, she and I. I wrenched myself free, no longer concerned with niceties. This sinister woman meant me harm, whoever or whatever she was. I fled the bar and peeled off into the night, her raspy laughter echoing behind me. I have no explanations for what I witnessed, only chilling questions. Why did she use my identity to lure people to that bar? And most disturbingly, what happened to those who did her bidding once inside? For now, I can only wait and watch for her next move. She is bound to my identity in ways I do not understand. But I know one thing, I will never view social media the same way again. There are sinister forces at work beneath those harmless selfies and status updates. Forces that wear familiar faces while concealing wicked intent. I've glimpsed the darkness behind the mask, and I fear it's only a matter of time before it comes for me once more. That ominous snap from my buddy showing someone tampering with his front door lock sent a chill down my spine. I hoped it was just a prank, but had a gut feeling this was something far more sinister unfolding in real time. When I texted him asking if everything was okay, the deafening silence that followed only amplified my unease. Moments later, he sent another snap, this time capturing the loud bang of his front door being kicked in with force. I could hear the wood violently splintering even through the muffled audio. I frantically called him 3 times, but he kept going to voicemail. My mind started racing, imagining my friend now trapped inside with an intruder breaching his home. I felt an urgency to get help to him immediately. I tried to call the police, but soon realized I didn't actually have his address since I had only been to his new place once before. We'd always just met elsewhere instead. I pulled up his location on SnapMap, praying it would show where he lived. The little avatar looked like it was at his house while some criminal was breaking in at that very moment. My heart was pounding now, brainstorming how I could get emergency responders there as soon as humanly possible. In desperation, I sent him a snap begging him to share his address if he was able. I also asked if he had any weapons or potential defense items inside that he could access while waiting for help. But again, only radio silence coming from his end. That's when the gravity of the situation really set in. My friend was completely exposed to whatever malicious intent this intruder had. I felt utterly powerless to protect my friend, who was clearly in harm's way. I decided to pull up his location history on SnapMap to see if I could piece together where he lived based on past places his avatar had been. I scrolled through feverishly searching for familiar neighborhoods and landmarks. Finally, a street named near the lake jogged my memory. I was pretty sure that was his block. Without definitive confirmation, I dialed 911, shared my hunch of where he lived, and urgently conveyed what was happening based on the snaps he sent. The dispatcher said they would send a patrol car to check it out ASAP. My heart was still pounding as I waited anxiously for their callback. Moments later, my phone lit up with another terrifying snap from my friend. This time showing a masked man standing in his living room gripping what looked like a crowbar or a pipe. The menacing figure was just lurking around, presumably hunting for my friend, who must have been stealthily documenting this nightmare unfolding in his own home. Seeing that shifty masked intruder in his house sent my adrenaline into overdrive. I felt sick imagining what could happen to my defenseless friend while I was sitting here unable to truly help. Finally, the dispatcher called back, but said officers found no signs of a break-in at the address I provided. I quickly clarified that the intruder must already be inside based on the latest snap, and strongly urged them to sweep every room immediately. The dispatcher quickly updated the responding officers. But at this point, my mind was conjuring the worst as each minute ticked by. My friend was trapped inside his dimly lit house with an armed and dangerous predator. I kept racking my brain for anything I could do to possibly assist in some small way from miles away. In desperation, I texted my friend something that might vibrate his muted phone as a signal. I said, "Cops are outside. Make noise to alert them if you can." I hoped those simple words might prompt him to bang something or call out if it was safe enough to do so. But I got no indication if he saw the message or not. Waiting there in my dimly lit apartment, feeling utterly useless, my mind cycled through vivid images of my friend hiding in sheer terror while this criminal skulked around just one room away, crowbar gripped tight. An innocent night of TV had turned into my absolute worst nightmare as I felt powerless to intervene or even confirm if my friend was okay. Dark possibilities kept flooding my mind, making me feel sick to my stomach imagining what could be happening inside that house at this very moment. Finally, after what felt like centuries, the dispatcher called back and said they apprehended the intruder and my friend was unharmed, just deeply shaken by the traumatic invasion. I breathed an enormous sigh of relief and felt my body finally relax. Chatting with him later, he graciously thanked me profusely for sending help quickly once I pieced together what was happening. He had put his phone on silent without realizing it, which is why he didn't respond to my repeated attempts to contact him. In the end, I was just grateful the police made it in time before the intruder could find my defenseless friend hiding there. The entire nerve-wracking ordeal gave me chills realizing how a quiet night at home can transform into your worst nightmare in just minutes. I'll never forget feeling completely helpless worrying something fatal was about to happen to my friend as that creep lurked right nearby. It was an eye-opening experience that prompted both of us to heighten our home security going forward. My friend triple checks the door is locked at night now, and I'm looking into getting cameras and an alarm system installed. We realized just how vulnerable we truly are after what transpired that evening. I'm just thankful my friend emerged physically unscathed and the police apprehended that criminal before any permanent damage could be done. But the emotional scars from imagining the possibilities of what could have happened still linger. It was a terrifying night I certainly will never forget. It started out as just another night chatting with my best friend Jenna on Snapchat. We send each other silly selfies and chat about our days like normal. Around 10 p.m., after I had changed into my pajamas and settled into bed, I sent her a pic of the massive bowl of cookie dough ice cream I was indulging in while watching Netflix. She quickly replied with the laughing, crying emoji and said, "Living your best life." I laughed at her response and closed the app, not thinking anything of our brief exchange. The next morning, I rolled over in bed and opened up Snapchat like I always do while I eat breakfast. Still blurry-eyed from just waking up, I clicked on my chat with Jenna to see if she had sent me anything overnight. But that's when I noticed something strange. Our entire conversation from the previous night wasn't there. The last message in our chat was from 2 days ago, nothing at all from the exchange we had about my late-night ice cream. I sat up in bed, now fully awake, and tried refreshing the app, thinking it must be some kind of glitch. But no matter how many times I closed it and reopened it, our messages were gone. Confused and unsettled, I texted Jenna, "Hey, did you delete our snaps from last night?" She replied quickly, "No, I definitely didn't delete anything." Why? Now I was really freaked out. I told her that the pics I sent of my ice cream last night were completely gone from our chat history. She responded, insisting she still had everything on her end and hadn't deleted a thing. My mind started racing trying to make sense of this. We could have deleted just my side of the conversation. I ran through all the possibilities in my head. Could it be some bizarre glitch in the Snapchat app itself? But then why would Jenna still have the messages on her end of the chat? The only plausible reason was if someone somehow hacked my account and deleted them. But if a hacker had gotten in, wouldn't they have just deleted the whole conversation? The fact that it was only my messages that were gone didn't make any sense. I decided to just brush it off as some weird unexplained app issue and went about my day as usual, trying to push it out of my mind. But later that evening when I got home from work and opened up Snapchat, I saw a notification that Jenna had sent me a selfie an hour ago. However, when I eagerly clicked into our chat to view it, the latest selfie wasn't there. Just like the previous night, our most recent messages were mysteriously gone. Immediately, I called Jenna and urgently said it happened again. "The selfie you just sent me is gone." She sounded shocked on the other end of the line and adamantly insisted she still had the selfie on her end and absolutely had not deleted anything. Now I was genuinely freaked out. This was clearly no random glitch. Someone or something had to be very intentionally going in and deleting only my side of the conversation. Over the next few days, the same unsettling pattern kept repeating itself. Random messages would completely vanish from my side of the chat without explanation. Jenna and I started getting really paranoid and suspicious, constantly wondering who or what could possibly be messing with us like this. We make sure to immediately send each other screenshots now whenever we exchanged anything important, just so we had a backup copy in case the messages mysteriously disappeared again. I racked my brain day and night trying to figure out who would want to spy on my conversations with my best friend and selectively delete my messages. I decided to completely reset my phone to factory settings in case there was some kind of creepy monitoring software secretly installed that I didn't know about. Once it was wiped clean and set up again like brand new, Jenna and I cautiously resumed our normal Snapchatting. The very next day, however, the same inexplicable message deletion started happening again. Whoever or whenever was doing this had clearly found yet another way to access my device and conversations. That night, around 3 a.m., I was jolted awake by the sounds of noises coming from my closet. Terrified, I quickly turned on the lights, but no one seemed to be there. My mind was racing. Were these strange occurrences connected? Was someone not just monitoring and deleting my Snapchats, but physically inside my home, watching me? I barely slept the rest of the night, riddled with anxiety that I was being watched or followed by some unseen entity. A few days later, Jenna called me in near hysterics, saying that now messages were disappearing from her end of the chat too. Whoever had been targeting only me before apparently now had access to both of our accounts and devices. We immediately changed all our Snapchat passwords, but the vanishing messages continued. At this point, Jenna and I were genuinely terrified to say anything important over Snapchat, certain that we were being closely watched. We had to resort to carefully planning covert meetings in person if we needed to discuss anything sensitive, and use vague code language over Snapchat to set up the plans. I became paranoid and uneasy, constantly feeling like I was being observed, not just online, but physically too in my own home. I couldn't shake the creepy feeling of eyes following me everywhere I went. I knew the only way I'd get any real answers or peace of mind was if Jenna and I could set an ingenious trap to try and lure and catch whoever was behind these sick, twisted games. So we put our heads together and hatched an elaborate scheme. We staged a fake conversation on Snapchat about arranging to meet up late at night in a super secluded, hidden parking lot on the outskirts of town. We peppered the chat with code words that we hoped would pique our hidden stalkers' interest and entice them to show up, thinking they could secretly observe our clandestine meeting. Jenna and I didn't really plan to meet there, of course. The parking lot rendezvous was a total decoy. But if our tormentor took the bait, maybe we could spot them arriving and finally expose who had been sadistically harassing us for weeks. It was dangerous, but neither of us would ever feel free and secure again until we unmasked the source of these bizarre Snapchat happenings. We exchanged the fake plans over Snapchat, trying to make the conversation seem believable and irresistible to the creep we assumed was closely monitoring.
Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.
Determined to get to the bottom of this unsettling mystery once and for all. We could hardly wait for the moment when we would finally get the chance to turn the tables on our hidden tormentor.